I fell in love with my sister's boyfriend by mistake, and now I don't know what to do. Am I wrong for this? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. All of this started when my sister wanted me to help her figure out if her boyfriend would ever cheat on her. Now, me being the best sister in the world that I am, I said of course. We opened up a fake Instagram. Then we uploaded pictures for 2 months. We were so invested in this. We even found a girl that lived an hour away and asked her to send us pictures. And of course, we paid her for it. So we basically had this real account. Then my sister told me one day she was ready for me to start sending messages to him through that account. And when I did, he started messaging back, like almost right away. The things he was saying to this girl were so sweet. It was basically like he was just trying to get to know her. I went along with it for a week. But this is when I realized that every time he'd message me, my heart would start pounding and I'd get really excited. By the end of the week, I just realized that I started catching feelings for him. The job my sister asked me to do, I was doing. And in the process, I was falling in love. I was confused and terrorized by my own feelings. I felt guilty, and honestly, I felt really bad for my sister because he was also cheating on her. He wasn't saying anything vulgar, by the way, but he was definitely being super sweet. I decided to wait a whole other week to tell my sister. This meant that for another week, I was messaging him like I was this other girl. And he started wanting to talk on the phone. So I literally got on the phone with him. I changed my voice slightly and we were talking every single night. He would call me and we'd talk for about half an hour. And during these conversations, we just got to know each other. I felt sick in the head. Mind you, my sister's in the bedroom next to mine. While he was telling my sister that he had to go to bed early for work, he was on the phone with me. By the end of the second week, I knew my time was up. I had all the evidence and I needed to show it to my sister. I waited for her to come home, but only to see that she came with her boyfriend. I nearly passed out when I saw him come into the house. I had the craziest butterflies. He came up and hugged me like he usually does. Except this time, I was totally in love. Little did he know that I'd been the one he'd been talking to this whole time. But as soon as he left, I told my sister everything. My sister read those messages for hours. Go to part 2. I fell in love with my sister's boyfriend by mistake. Am I wrong for this? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I had been pretending to be somebody else on Instagram to catch him cheating, and it worked. But I fell in love with him in the process. But nonetheless, I told my sister everything. I showed her all the messages that he had been sending this account. It was 2 weeks worth of messages, so my sister read them for hours, crying the entire time. She was completely beside herself. And the whole time, I'm suffering with her too. She is my sister, but I'm also in love with her boyfriend. I also felt like I was technically the other girl. I asked my sister to take a break from looking at the messages, and she did. With tears in her eyes, she looks at me and says, "I feel so guilty because I cheated first." Then she started confessing that she only set him up to see if he would cheat on her because she felt guilty that she cheated first. And I want to know what you guys think. Do you think it's cheating if he was talking to another girl on Instagram? Even though it wasn't inappropriate, it was just kind and sweet. Apparently, she hooked up with one of our neighbors. She says it only happened once and she feels really guilty about it. She made me swear I would never tell, but I couldn't help it. I texted my sister's boyfriend anonymously telling him that he got cheated on. He confronted my sister right away, and she just broke down and started to cry. Then she told him about the fake account and that it was all me, and now he won't talk to me. They actually ended up breaking up. I want to text him so bad and tell him that I love him. What should I do? Self-care sister out. Am I wrong for thinking my sister-in-law is a bitch? She convinced me not to wear makeup to my prom. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Slowly but surely, I think my sister-in-law has been sabotaging me, and I don't understand why. She's dating my brother. Why does she have to be jealous of me? At least I think she is. Well, this all started a while ago, and I think I've been really paranoid about it. When I talk to my family about it, especially my brother, he says that I'm going crazy, and that she would never do that. So let me start from the beginning. My brother and her started dating 2 years ago. And at first, of course, she would come over to our house and try to impress us all, but I had no reason to not like her. In fact, I liked her a lot. I love the way she treated my brother, and I love the way that they were in love. You could just tell they were good for each other. They also weren't toxic at all. Every time I open my phone, I see a story about a toxic relationship, and they are so far from that. The point is, I was really happy for them, but when Christmas came around, she gave everyone in my family a gift. We're a family of 5. My brother and I and my parents, and our beautiful pup. She got everyone, including the pup, a gift except for me. Her excuse for that was that she didn't know what to get me because I'm so picky. Why would she say that I'm picky? And she also said it in front of my family. I looked at my mom and my mom looked at me. And we shared the look, you know? Around this time, there was a boy that was paying attention to me, and I told my brother about it. And my brother always gives me the best advice. Of course, he went and told her everything. So she came back to me and told me that I shouldn't even try to date boys right now, and that whatever this guy's trying to do is probably only to manipulate me. I asked her why she thought that, and she said that him trying to DM me on Instagram is not proof that he wants a real relationship. That's when I told her that I didn't even know if I wanted a relationship with this boy. We were just talking through DM. And she told me I was too gullible. That conversation made me feel so bad. She made me feel insecure, and she made me think that he wasn't a good person for DMing me. After that, I didn't trust her. I kept my distance, and she noticed. She started complaining to my brother that I was being mean to her. Then my brother got mad at me. He asked me to please be nice to her because she was sensitive. When I explained to him what she said to me, he said that she was just looking out for me. My parents thought that I was being difficult. She managed to turn everyone against me. But it gets so much worse. Go to part 2. Am I wrong for thinking my sister-in-law is a bitch? Disclaimer, this is not my story time, part 2. After managing to turn everyone against me and my family, she had to hit me even harder. Me being the nice person I am, and because my brother and my parents were upset at me, I extended her an olive branch. I invited her to a Galentine's I was hosting at my house with all my friends. I was very specific in the invitation about what you should wear. I said bring your cute jammies, or a cute robe, or something comfortable. She showed up in a super long tight maxi dress, heels, and a full face of makeup. She even wore her extensions. And I know when she wears them because she has short hair, but she came with long hair. She looked ridiculous. Oh, and really quickly, my friends already knew the situation between her and I. So one of my friend says to her, I don't think you read the dress code. That's when I quickly said, it's okay, she looks great. Then obviously all my friends started telling her how amazing she looked, and she turned around so that we could see the full dress. Of course, that night she was on her best behavior because she didn't want us and my friends to notice how much of a bitch she is. You know, she was in disguise. Prom was in a few weeks and I still didn't have a dress. Oh, and by the way, the boy that was DMing me on Instagram, he was gonna be my date, and we were just like casually dating. He was so sweet, and even my family liked him, by the way. I knew for my makeup I wanted something beautiful and ethereal with crystals. You see, my dress was inspired by a ballerina dress. I trained in ballet for years, so I knew I wanted this. Even my date wanted to wear pink because my dress was pink. It was all so perfect. My mom found the most amazing makeup artist, and when I saw her work, I knew she was exactly the makeup artist I wanted. Everything she did was ethereal and soft and blushy and pink. But then my brother came over for dinner with his girlfriend, and when my mom showed her the makeup artist, she started criticizing everything the makeup artist did. She had posted some videos on YouTube, and she went through the video, paused it, and showed us every little thing that she was doing wrong, in her opinion. Let me remind you, she's not a makeup artist. That's when she went on a rant about how bad a full face of makeup looks on prom night, and how the pictures are gonna look horrible because they have flash. That if they put the wrong shade of powder and foundation, it's gonna look terrible. Then she started to convince me that I should just use skincare, and that because of my dress, it would go perfectly. She even showed me examples of what kind of skincare looks I should do. I mean, she showed me a girl putting on skincare on Instagram. At that point, I was just so sick of her talking that I was like, yeah, sure, I could do that. As the weeks passed, I didn't book the makeup artist and my mom didn't either. I was really busy with tests and studying, so by the time prom came around, I had no makeup artist. This is when I started looking at tutorials and I realized I cannot do my makeup like that. So then I looked at my skincare cabinet and I was like, okay, I guess I could do some skincare. I showed up to prom with just skincare on, and in the pictures, I looked terrible, oily, and greasy. She was so wrong. When I look at my friends' pictures, they all look beautiful, with full faces of makeup on because they all went to professional makeup artists. I didn't feel as pretty as I could have on prom night, telling me I looked pretty. I am done talking to my sister-in-law. My mom is also angry at her too. If she does anything else, I'll come and tell you guys. Self-care sister out.
I got drunk at my wedding and made out with the best man. Girl, what? Welcome to the confessional. Send in your story times and I'm gonna read them on here. My husband and I got married 2 months ago. Girl, 2 months? My husband's family is Christian and they are very strict. My mother-in-law chose my wedding dress. During the planning of the wedding, my husband had his best friend with him at all times. And during that time, I caught his best friend staring at me several times. Spicy! Every time we caught each other's eye, we would just stare at each other for a few seconds and then look away. The night of our rehearsal dinner, he came up to me and asked me if I was stressed. I responded by saying yes. Then he offered me a drink. My husband doesn't really like me drinking, so we went to the bathroom and took shots together. It was actually really fun and exciting, and we both hit it off that night. If you're wondering if I felt guilty, no, I did not. We ended up drinking 3 shots each, and he almost kissed me. At least I got the feeling. Too much blush? The attraction between us was palpable, and when I looked down, his... Oh my God! His thing-a-ling was hard. Our wedding was the next night, and I couldn't stop thinking about his best friend. As I was getting ready for the wedding, he came and knocked on my door while the makeup artist was doing my makeup. Oh my gosh. And said that I looked so beautiful, he couldn't believe it. That's when the makeup artist asked him to leave and said, the groom can't be in here. That's when I said, that's not the groom. That's my husband's best friend. Oh, damn. The ceremony goes off without a hitch and we go to the reception. This is where it gets juicy. My fiance and I had practiced a dance for us to do for the guest, but he refused at the last minute. I instantly get upset at my fiance, walk straight up to his best friend and ask him if he wants to dance. We get up, start dancing, and instantly my husband gets up to dance with his cousin? Ew. Ew, what? Why is he trying to dance with his cousin and not his new wife? That's when all the guests jump up and join us on the dance floor. After 30 minutes of dancing, he takes me by the hand, the best friend, takes me by the hand and walks me outside. Suddenly we're alone and he kisses me. The butterflies in my stomach went crazy and we couldn't stop making out. Luckily, nobody saw us. We went back to the party and pretended like nothing happened. Oh girl, something did happen. After spending 2 weeks in Greece with my husband for our honeymoon, I was completely unhappy. A little background, we had only known each other for a year before we got married. We had never even traveled together at that point and he was being an absolute nightmare. After we got back, I decided to hook up with his best friend and we did it. We've been having an affair ever since then. I asked my husband for a divorce, but he won't give it to me because of a visa issue. What should I do? In my professional opinion as a story timer here on TikTok, I would say be honest with your husband, say to him that you don't want to be with him. Go be happy with a bestie. Travel with him before you get married. Everyone leave your advice in the comments. I love you guys. Bye. I f***ed my personal trainer while my husband was home. Oh my god. Welcome to The Confessional, a series where you guys send me your story times through here and I tell them here on TikTok so that you guys can get some genuine advice. From the day I met my husband, he would fat shame me. What is he, an Adonis? Made out of muscles? He's always complained about how I have a soft body and wants me to have abs like all those Insta models. I'm not the type to keep my mouth shut, so I told him to get me a personal trainer. We've been married 6 years now and I've never bothered to go to the gym, not even one day. He likes going to the gym religiously and is in really good shape. So what? That doesn't mean that he gets to fat shame you, ever. I was actually joking about the personal trainer, but he actually agreed to it. He told me that he could only get me a male trainer, but he thought it was okay because he was a very good trainer. Never did I expect that this guy would turn my life around in the best way possible. Yes! By the way, I'm not even looking into a mirror right now. I'm reading off my cell phone. The trainer came over the next day and I was embarrassed to see how hot and attractive he was. We sat down and spoke for about 20 minutes and he asked me all about my goals. I know I must sound stupid. No, you don't. But getting the attention from such a hot guy made me feel seen again. Babe, that's because your husband doesn't make you feel seen. Now, here's the thing. I felt like he was attracted to me too. He kept staring into my eyes and would smile all the time. I was trying not to misinterpret things since he is so attractive and he probably smiles at all his clients, which he probably does. But then he started putting his hands around my waist, my shoulders, and my arms. I know the difference between a man's touch and a trainer's touch. Oh my god. This was a man's touch. We were working out in the backyard and that's when my husband came over and said he was leaving to run some errands. We finished the workout session and I was super sweaty. It was amazing. This man proceeded to stay with me for the next hour and a half talking about my goals once again. Wait, that's so sweet. 2 days later, he came over for our second session and that's when shit went down. In preparation for our second session, I drove myself to Lululemon and bought the tightest leggings I could find. I would do the same. I even bought the matching sports bra and wore a two-piece set for the first time ever. Girl, you go. Luckily, my husband had already left to the gym, so we were all by ourselves. As soon as my trainer came in through the door, he complimented me and told me that I looked amazing. A few minutes into the workout, I couldn't help myself any longer and I asked him if he was attracted to me. Damn! He answered yes right away and we both started blushing and laughing at the same time. Now that I managed to break the ice, I would leave him to make the next move. And he did. He stood behind me while I was doing some squats and I felt it. God. Girl, I want to live vicariously through you so bad. I turned around and we started making out passionately. As we were kissing, his hands started moving elsewhere, north and south. My knees were trembling. Yeah. My husband is not the most affectionate guy, so I was in much need of some loving. When we stopped kissing, we started laughing again at what we had just done. 2 minutes later, I hear my husband coming home. We quickly separated, but the next day it went further. This time my husband stayed home and we couldn't keep our hands off each other. My husband tends to lock himself in his office when he's looking at corn. And as soon as my trainer came over, he locked himself in his office, which means you know what. I knew it was our chance, so I grabbed his hand and took him to the back house. He pulled my pants down and he went at it. Then I pulled down his pants and I went at it. And then we did the dirty. As soon as we finished, we went outside and pretended like we were just done working out, which you could believe because we were both sweaty AF. It's been 2 months since I've been working out with my trainer and it's going amazing. I've managed to lose 10 pounds. I look amazing and I feel even better because every time he comes over, we end up doing it. My husband, on the other hand, has no clue and I don't care. He still continues to fat shame me, by the way, and he continues to show me pictures of girls on Instagram who he wishes I would look like. I'm pretty sure he's having an affair with his assistant. At this point, I don't care. I'm hiring a divorce lawyer and I'm getting half of everything. As you should. Should I feel guilty? I don't think he should find out that you're cheating because then you can't get half of everything. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Tell your husband about the trainer after you get a divorce. I mean, I'm sure he's gonna find out anyway. Go live your best life, get in shape, do the dirty, do whatever you want to do with this man, but be careful with your husband. Love you guys. Bye. My boyfriend is threatening to break up with me if I don't agree to a threesome? Welcome to The Confessional, a series where you guys send me your story times on here and I tell them on TikTok so you can get advice. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years. When we first met, we were so compatible in every single way possible. Not so much, babe. He started a new job and he's been cold and distant, so I figured it was just the stress. As we were about to start having, you know what, doing the dirty, he asked me if I've ever had a threesome, which he definitely knows I have not. So him asking me was an excuse to even bring it up. Duh. I said, of course not. And he said, would you ever want to? I quickly said, no, I would never want to have a threesome. I don't want to share you. That's when he rolled his eyes and said that he wasn't in the mood anymore. I told him he was being selfish since he was the one that had initiated and that he should at least help me finish. Then he said, not until you consider having a threesome. Girl, manipulation 101. He did not speak to me for the next 3 days. I finally asked him what was wrong. He said that he really wanted to have a threesome before we got married. That's when I asked him who he wanted to have the threesome with, and he said, a girl from my job. We all saw this coming, right? I instantly started to cry because I had a feeling that he had met somebody at work. Then he said he wouldn't talk to me until I stopped crying and behaved like a grown woman.
Well, that's rich, coming from a grown-ass man who just gave you the silent treatment for 3 days.
He then pulls out his phone and shows me a picture of her. Oh my God. Then he said, look at her in a bikini. She's got such a great body. This is especially cruel since he knows that I've been trying to lose weight for the past 1.5 years, and it's been really hard because of my thyroid. That's when I took his phone away and started checking his messages. He freaked out. Of course he did, because he's probably texting her. They followed each other on Snapchat, so I couldn't see what they were sending each other. When I checked his Instagram DMs, their messages were pretty innocent. What if he deleted the messages before he showed you her pictures knowing you might do that? You can't assume that the messages were innocent, babe. Sorry. When I came out of the bathroom, he called me a crazy bitch, which was the first time he'd ever called me any name. That's when he told me that he should have just cheated behind my back instead of offering to have a threesome as a courtesy to me. At this point, we were moving together, but he asked me to move my things out after 2 days. He said he wasn't ready to commit to somebody who's not open to having fun and doing new things. That's coercion. He can't force you to have sex with somebody. In an effort to stop him from moving me out, I said yes to the threesome. He got so excited, he texted her immediately and said, it's on. 2 days later, he asked me to go get waxed. Waxed? The night of the threesome arrived and she came over in a red dress. As soon as she saw my boyfriend, she jumped into his arms and they started making out. Went into the bedroom and immediately they started ripping each other's clothes off. It's like I wasn't even there. That's when she grabbed my hand and pulled me onto the bed and started getting me naked too. My boyfriend came over to me on the bed and started kissing me, but that's when I got up and I couldn't do it. I said, you guys go ahead, I'll leave. My boyfriend got so mad, he kicked me out. 2 days later, I get a message from the girl asking me to go on a date. What? During the date, she apologized for my boyfriend's behavior and said that she didn't realize he was coercing me into doing it. Then she said she was actually more attracted to me than my boyfriend because she's more into girls. Oh my God. That's when she leaned over and tried to kiss me, but I pulled away. I told her I was in love with my boyfriend, that I was not interested in her like that. That's when she broke my heart and told me that he was flirting with all the girls at her job, not just her. And that he had already approached one of the other girls at their job to have a threesome, but hadn't told me yet. Should I accept this or should I just move on? I definitely think you need to move on. Someone who loves you is never going to try to coerce you into having relations with somebody else. Do you realize how wrong that is? What do you guys think? Drop your advice in the comments. I love you guys. Bye.
Story time about how my father bribed my boyfriend to not break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's on my Instagram. Unfortunately, I have a lot of anxiety and I'm a very, very shy person. So it's always been hard for me to find friends and even harder to date men. I'm 37 and I've only ever been on one date. I come from a Latin family, and this is unforgivable to them. Since I turned 20, my family has always asked me every single day of my life when I'm going to find a man. As you can imagine, this adds even more to my anxiety because I just feel extremely pressured. Remember that one date I went on? Well, that was actually set up through my parents. I was 25 years old and my mom started getting personal training. Her personal trainer is the one she set up the date with. And this guy was a nightmare. He was rude to the waiters of the restaurant we went to, and immediately after that, I just left. I didn't even give him a second chance. As you can imagine, my parents were furious. My mom actually told me that she wanted me to marry this guy, and I was like, have you met him? I've always been completely misunderstood. Fast forward to me being 37, I landed my dream job in New York City and I moved away from home. I was happy being independent and moving away from my parents. I even lost my virginity and I was happy about it. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my father bribed my boyfriend to not break up with me. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's something on Instagram. Finally lost my virginity at 37 years old. I was living by myself in New York City and I had finally moved away from my toxic parents. But my parents would call me every single day. And guess what they would ask? Did you finally meet someone at work? Apparently, I was about to meet somebody at work that I would marry. So this is how I met the guy I lost my virginity to. At work. I guess my parents were right. I work in fashion and marketing, and every day I went to work, I had to dress up really well. And it was fun. Again, for the first time in my life, I was coming out of my shell. One of the editors at my job started noticing me. He invited me out to coffee and told me he wanted to show me the ropes. This was the first time that I found myself really attracted to a man. As you can imagine, I was so down. Ended up going to a bar and having wine together. After that, everything is a blur. I know that I kissed him and he kissed me back. That's when he asked me to go on a second date. And on the second date, we did it. I ended up losing my virginity and I called my parents and told them. This actually made them very happy. But now they said I had to marry the guy. But guess what? This guy wanted to be my boyfriend. And we started dating. But then I found something out. Part 3 is up.
My husband won't stop slut-shaming me because I told him that I used to strip. How do I get him to stop? Disclaimers are not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. My husband and I have been married for 3 years. We actually got separated at the beginning of this year, and it was actually good for the both of us. My husband's always been a little bit, macho is the way I want to put it. He sometimes has a habit of humiliating me in front of his friends. I actually have a job that pays more than his, and this has always been a problem for him because he feels like he should be the breadwinner. So he basically makes jokes about how I'm the guy in the relationship. Our friends and family think it's totally inappropriate, but I think it's kind of funny. But when my friends explained it to me, it is kind of bad, I guess. I own 2 e-commerce businesses that I run from our house, so I'm essentially home all day. Recently, we decided that we wanted to have kids, so we started trying. Unfortunately, my husband comes from a family where they believe the women should be doing all the cooking and the cleaning. So my husband expects for me to do all of those things. And if I don't, he tells me that I'm a bad wife. He also likes to control how I dress, and he doesn't like me drinking. A few weeks ago, we went to a friend's party and I got a little drunk. And on the way home, I decided to make a confession that I used to be a stripper. Part 2 is up. My husband won't stop slut-shaming me because I told him that I used to strip. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, I said it on Instagram. And that's when I confessed that I used to be a stripper. Right then and there, he pulls the car over to the side of the road. Then he actually started interrogating me. He asked me when I started, how long I did it for, where I stripped, what I wore, what the worst thing I had ever done was. He was trying to get all the tea. Immediately, I regretted it. I honestly didn't think that it was going to be a big deal. I mean, we have been married for 3 years now, so I thought that he would be more accepting of it. But that's when I remembered he comes from a family where they think that women shouldn't even have rights. I tried to take it back as a joke and he said that's not going to work. Proceeded to ask me questions for 2 hours on the side of the road. It was already 3 in the morning. By the end of it, I was so exhausted I started to cry and begged him to take me home. Then he said that he was afraid of even going to bed with me because I might give him an STD. That's when he told me that I probably took money for sex. I had succeeded into digging myself into the deepest hole ever. I begged him to forget and he wouldn't. That's when he pulled out his phone and started texting his brothers. He told them everything. When we got home, he made me sleep on the couch. Part 3 is up. Husband won't stop slut-shaming me because I told him that I used to strip. Disclaimer is not my story time, I said it on Instagram. He actually made me sleep on the couch for a full week. And he basically gave me the cold shoulder every single day. He wouldn't even look at me when I talked to him. He would do was ask me for food. Sometimes he'll just come up to me and be like, what are you doing, slut? His brothers told him that I was probably doing the dirty with all of these guys at the strip club, and that he shouldn't believe a word that I say. A few nights ago, he sat me down and started interrogating me again. He told me that he wanted me to tell him the truth, and for me to just confess that I had done it with all of my clients at the strip club. He's actually even threatening to go to the strip club where I used to work to ask questions about me. Mind you, the strip club is like 10 hours away from where we live. He even checked my phone and my laptop. He says that he's scared that I might still be in contact with my clients from the strip club, and that he doesn't know what I'm capable of anymore. I've been begging him for forgiveness every single day, but I kind of want to tell him to F off now. Can't take him calling me names anymore. Luckily, my parents fully support me and want me to move in with them. The only thing that I'm afraid of is that if we do get a divorce, he's gonna try to take all of my money. I have way more money than he does in the bank, and he knows it. I've been totally honest about how much money I earn.
turn. Big mistake. What should I do? Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. I come from a really big family. My mom has 5 sisters and 1 brother, and my dad has 4 brothers and sisters. All of them have their own kids, so I have a lot of cousins. And this means we have a lot of family get-togethers. Every single weekend, someone is hosting a party. We all get together and eat, and it's actually a really nice time. But there's always that one creepy uncle. In my case, it's my mom's brother. He's 46-year-old and has never married, but he's a bachelor. He's got money, so he basically has a bunch of sugar babies. Whenever my family tells him that he needs to get married, he says he'll never get married to anybody. He thinks women only exist for the pleasure of men. When I turned 16, I noticed that he would stare at me a lot. At first, it was just staring. Every now and again, he never did anything really creepy then, but just the staring was enough for me. I never told my mom about it then, not until I turned 18. This is when he started making comments like, wow, you're growing into your body, or wow, you got great hips. He would make comments about how I was growing up, like, ew. He even told my dad that he needed to keep me away from guys because I was growing up really quickly. And because of my curves, men would think that I was a woman. This is when I finally told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable. She thought it was funny at first, so I avoided him at all costs. Part 2. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. When I told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable, she laughed it off. She thought it was funny. She said, oh, you know how he is. So from that point on, I basically avoided my uncle every time we were at a family event. When I turned 20, this is when things got even worse. He would ask me things like if I was a virgin, or if I had a boyfriend, if I had ever been on dates. And one time he even told me that he would get very jealous if I ended up bringing a guy to one of our family events. One time he complimented me on the dress that I was wearing, so after that, I only wore baggy clothes to family events. The fact that I had to change the way that I dress so that he could control himself makes me sick. I finally told my mom again that my uncle was always bothering me. It's when she told me that the world is filled with men like him, and that all I needed to do was just ignore him. So I told my dad everything. My dad took it a little more seriously and told my uncle that he needed to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. I finally told my dad and he told my uncle to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed and told my dad that he was overreacting, and that all he said to me was that I was a pretty girl. What a liar. In part 1 and 2, I told you guys that it was getting worse, but here's where it actually gets even worse. Like I said, I have a really big family, so my cousins are growing up too. One of them just turned 13 and my uncle cannot stop staring at her. She's maturing a lot quicker than most 13-year-olds. He's already staring at her. So here's what I did. At the next family event, I sat right next to him. Every time he would stare at one of my cousins or try to make a comment at me, I called him out for it in front of everybody. I even recorded the things that he said. The fact that I even have to do this at a family event makes me sick. Instead of enjoying my time with my family, I have to sit next to my creepy uncle policing him. Anyway, it's totally worth it though. I'm making sure that my cousins don't feel uncomfortable. After I had enough recordings of him saying nasty things, at the next family event, I showed it to my grandma. I basically played it for the entire family. My grandma told him that he couldn't come to any more events if he was going to behave that way. And of course, he apologized to everyone right away. But not to me, he apologized to my dad. After his half-ass apology, he was let back into family events. I don't think that's enough punishment. Give me some ideas because I think I deserve justice. Creepy uncle. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimer, not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. My husband and I have a really toxic relationship. When he and I first started dating, I was extremely jealous. I would instigate fights almost every single day. Now that we're married, I'm definitely less jealous, but he's always been jealous throughout our relationship. He tries to control everything I do, down to the way I dress and even the people I can or cannot hang out with. He even insisted that I quit my job, which I did. He's invested a lot in Tesla and crypto, so he makes a lot of money without having to leave the house, which yes, is totally amazing, but that means he and I are together all the time. And with his jealousy, sometimes I just can't stand him. I've tried to help him with his jealousy because I used to be in that place. And when I try to talk to him about it, he just gets mad at me. Whenever he sees that I post something on Instagram, he gets angry. He says that I'm looking for attention, which of course I am, but not from guys. Everyone posts on social media because they want to show off their life. A little on my sister. We're identical twins, and we're really, really close. Unfortunately, my sister got laid off from her job last year. That's when she decided to start her OnlyFriends. I support her in everything she wants to do. She's actually making really good money from it, so she's really happy about it. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to look for something. When I see my sister's pictures, part 2 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to transfer some money from his account to mine. When I started looking for his banking app, I noticed something else on his screen. I had never seen this before, so I clicked on it. And as soon as I opened it, I see my sister's pictures. And I knew it was her OnlyFriends right away. By the way, I had never told my husband that my sister had an OnlyFriends. She wouldn't even post about it on her social media. So the fact that he found it makes me believe that he had my phone bugged or something. But here's the thing. He was using a different name for his account, so it was likely that my sister did not know it was him. him. From there, I could see that he was following a bunch of other girls. And when I went to their messages, he had paid over hundreds of dollars every single day to all of these girls. Can you imagine how much money that is? My husband came into the room and saw me on his phone. Of course, he didn't freak out because he never thought that I would find it. But I confronted him right away. But he didn't even flinch. He said he had every right to go on OnlyFans because it was the same thing as going to any website. I told him to at least unfollow my sister and he said that he wouldn't. He said he loved it because it was like watching me do naughty things. Then he said, "Isn't this better than cheating on you?" I was flabbergasted. Part 3 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimers is not my story time. It's not me on Instagram. That's when he told me that it was better than him cheating on me. And I was shocked. I couldn't think of anything else to say, so I threatened him. I told him that if he didn't stop following my sister, that I would start my own OnlyFriends account. Like I said, he's really jealous. So he went berserk. He ripped my phone out of my hand and threw it against the wall. Then he told me that the only reason he asked me to quit my job was so that I wouldn't be around other men. By the way, I used to be a personal trainer, and most of the time I would only train women. I told him that my sister and I wouldn't be comfortable with him looking at our OnlyFriends. It was so disturbing. Oh, and I also told him that he needed to stop controlling me, and that I could buy my own phone with my own money and start my own account. Then he came to his senses and started to apologize. And I also told him that I was suspecting that he bugged my phone, and that he was receiving my messages, because there was no other way he could have found out about my sister's account. Then he calmed down and explained things to me. He said that he had bugged my phone a few months ago because I was posting too much on Instagram and it was bothering him. So basically, he has access to my DMs and all my text messages. Promised to stop doing that and that he would buy me a new phone. And that's how he found out about my sister's OnlyFriends. He said he only signed up out of curiosity, and that he only wanted to see a few pictures and then delete it. But the more he kept looking at her pictures, the more he would think of me, and that it turned him on. And in front of me, he deactivated his account and deleted everything. He promised me that he would never do that again. Of course, I haven't forgiven him though. Haven't even spoken to him in days. But every time he sees me, he tries to kiss me and hug me. And when I push him away, he tries even harder. Honestly, I think he likes it. I do believe that he's secretly addicted to drama and that he thrives on it. I'm planning on never telling my sister about it. I don't think she'd feel comfortable around him ever again. I mean, I don't feel comfortable around him right now. I'm so confused and I don't know if I should leave him or not. He's so controlling all the time. What should I do? Am I an asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just to keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost 5 years. Granted, we did break up throughout those 5 years. With all the breakups, we've actually been together for about 3 years. I've never considered myself an obsessive person, but when it comes to him, something just takes over me. Here's some of the reasons why we broke up. At first, he didn't want to be in a relationship even though I begged him, which I know was so dumb of me. So he eventually broke up with me and told me that he didn't want anything serious. But he kept on calling me every single week because he wanted the dirty. Instead, I started going out on other dates and I would flaunt it all over my social media. And this worked. It made him super jealous and he came right back to me. Called me up one day and told me that he wanted me back. The second time we broke up, I caught him talking to some girls on Facebook. When I confronted him, he broke up with me. Told me I was too nosy and that he needed to live his life as a single man. We finally got back together. I told him that it was for marriage. He said yes, that he would eventually ask me to marry him. A few months ago, he started acting really cold towards me. He would barely call me, and when we were together, he would never touch me. That's when I started digging in his phone and I found that he was talking to some girls on Instagram. But I knew that if I confronted him, I would risk him breaking up with me again. So I did the next logical thing. I waited until I saw him again and I told him that I was pregnant. I even started to cry to make him feel like I was happy. His face turned completely white and he asked me if I was sure. I said, yes, aren't you happy, baby? Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just so that I could keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. That's when he started to cry. Remember, I don't even have a pregnancy test to show or anything. But surprisingly, he didn't ask for proof of my pregnancy. He just kept crying on the couch. I asked him if he was happy, but clearly he was not. But he lied and said, yeah, of course I'm happy. Seeing how vulnerable he was, I took advantage of the situation and I brought up marriage. I told him we should get engaged soon so that we could tell his family. Then he said, are you sure you want to get married? And I said, of course, we're gonna have a baby. Then he sat there for a minute and thought about it. Finally, he got down on one knee and said, do you want to marry me? I said yes! And this time I cried for real. All my dreams were coming true. After that, things started moving really fast. We invited both our families to my apartment and we hosted a dinner. We broke the news to them that I was pregnant. Again, nobody asked for proof of the pregnancy though. Our families were so happy and excited. That very same night, he gave me a beautiful engagement ring. His mom even started planning the baby shower. Let me remind you, I'm actually not pregnant. So I had to come up with a plan. You'll never guess what I did. Part 3 is up. Am I an asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just to keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. His mom started planning the baby shower and there was no turning back. Even my mom got involved in the planning of the baby shower. So like I said, I'm really not pregnant at this point. So I started trying to get pregnant, but my damn boyfriend just wouldn't touch me. I decided to check his phone again and saw that he was still talking to some girls on Instagram. So I decided to confront him at this point. I mean, we are engaged and I'm supposedly pregnant with his baby. I confronted him and he just got angry at me. He said that if he was gonna marry me and have a baby with me, he would need to talk to other girls and that was not a negotiation for him. Then he confessed that he was seeing 2 other girls on the side and that there was no way he was gonna stop seeing them and that I couldn't do anything about it. But his confession actually made me fall out of love with him. Now I'm planning to break up with him. But what do I do about the fake pregnancy? I do want to make him pay for what he said to me, but I don't want to hurt our families either. Should I just come clean? What should I do? A very well-known influencer who is hooking up with a famous football player who has a wife and kids. Am I the asshole? Claimers is not my story time was sending me on Instagram. Lost my job in early 2020, obviously due to COVID. Instead of looking for another job, I set my mind to becoming famous on social media. Knew that I could make it happen, but I didn't know how yet. I did some research, so I basically started copying everything everybody else did, like all the other famous influencers. I dabbled in fashion, makeup, lots of lifestyle content, but finally I landed on bikini content. This just put me on a new level. Started gaining tons of followers. After posting every single day for about 6 months, I was almost at 400,000. This is when all the DMs started rolling in. Really famous rappers, actors, athletes, comedians, other influencers, big YouTubers. I mean, the list goes on and on. So of course, I would reply to all of their DMs. Some offered to fly me out to see them, and others were living in the same city that I was. So I basically started going out on dates. The first date I ever went on was with a rapper. I don't want to give too many details because I think you guys could guess who this is. He was very popular in 2010s. I mean, he's still popular now, but he made a lot of good music then. Anyway, he had me come over to his house, spent the night at his house, and we basically talked the entire night. Surprisingly, we had really good conversations, and that was that. And I got a DM from a really big football player who I knew was already married and had kids. That didn't stop me from messaging him back. Part 2 is up. I'm a well-known influencer who's hooking up with a famous football player who's married and has kids. Am I the asshole? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. When I saw his DM, I quickly answered. Sent me little heart eyes. So I replied back with some hearts. Then he asked me where I lived. I told him that I was in LA and he said, okay, cool. I can fly you out. I said, sure. Literally the next day, I was flying first class to go see this guy. Got me a suite at a really nice hotel. He said he would show up at 7, but he actually showed up at 11 p.m. By this point, I was already in my pajamas and my skincare. Once he came up to the room, he apologized for being so late. That's when he said that he liked that I wasn't wearing makeup. Which makes me laugh so much because before he arrived, I had a full face of makeup on and a freaking cocktail dress and heels. He said that I was a natural beauty. That's when he basically ordered the entire menu from the hotel. He ordered steak, pasta, pancakes, waffles, French toast, champagne, and a bunch of other stuff. He asked me if I wanted a salad. I said yes. While we were waiting for the food, he started kissing me and we basically ended up doing it. It happened really quick. It was over in like 2 minutes. Afterward, he kissed me and then the food came. He proceeded to eat almost everything that he ordered, but he left me some salad and fries. That was it. It's like he was telling me that he only wanted me to eat salad. After that, he started asking me questions like if I was dating other people. Said no, but I was going on dates. When he told me that he only wanted me to be exclusive with him, that he would fly me out whenever he was available. I said yes, but I knew that I wasn't going to go through with that because I'm not going to be traveling for him all the time. Part 3 is up. I'm a well-known influencer who's hooking up with a famous football player who has a wife and kids. Am I the asshole? Claimers is not my story time was sending me on Instagram. That's when he told me he wanted me to be exclusive with him, that he would basically fly me out whenever he wanted. Obviously said yes to his face, but I was not planning on it. Would I be flying around the country to go see this one guy? Good news is when I got back home, I had a bunch of new DMs. So I went on a few more dates. I went on a date with a very famous YouTuber. It was super fun, really casual, and didn't really expect anything from me, which was really nice. When we went on our date, he actually treated me like a queen. If this guy asked me to be his girlfriend, I would totally say yes in a heartbeat. Then the football player actually ended up calling me the same night that I was on the date with the YouTuber. Decided to go to the bathroom and answer the phone. That's when he started acting all jealous and asked me where I was. He said that I should be home resting and ready to go see him again. He asked me if I could fly out the next day. I said no because I did have a modeling job, thank God. I mean, a girl needs to make money. Then he said that he would start giving me an allowance of $5,000 a month. I said yes to in a heartbeat. So I ended up canceling the modeling job. I flew out the next day to go see him and he actually gave me the $5,000. Said that every time I saw him, he would give me more. Here's the thing, he has a wife and kids and I do feel bad about that. This has been happening now for a few months. I have more money now than I ever had. And I'm still modeling on the side, so I'm making my own money. I'm still going out on dates with other guys. What should I do? My girlfriend abandoned me on my birthday so she could go hang out with her guy best friend. Part 2. After I told her I did not want her best friend coming to my birthday getaway, she threw a tantrum, called him, and complained about me in front of me to him. I was actually so hurt that I grabbed the phone and hung up. She looked at me and told me that I had no right to take the phone from her and blah, blah, blah. That's when I broke down into tears and asked her point blank, do you have a crush on this guy? Immediately she said no. But then she told me she had a confession. She proceeded to tell me that they both lost each other's V cards to each other. And that's why they were so close. And that because they're trying to work on their relationship, I should let him come to my birthday trip, the one I'm paying for. I asked her if she had feelings for him once again and she said no. And then I asked her if he has feelings for her. This girl just stayed quiet. Then she had the gall to say, What if he does? Is that really that bad? I actually had to explain to her why that would be a bad situation. Finally, my birthday comes around and she is nowhere to be seen. I was waiting for her in my car to drive to the cabin with her. An hour later, after she's supposed to be there, she sends me a text saying that she's gonna stay with him and that hopefully this distance will make our relationship stronger. Instead, I took my whole family to the cabin and now I'm ignoring her. Now she's been calling me nonstop. I took her not showing up as a breakup, but she wants me back. What should I do?
Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. I come from a really big family. My mom has 5 sisters and 1 brother, and my dad has 4 brothers and sisters. All of them have their own kids, so I have a lot of cousins. And this means we have a lot of family get-togethers. Every single weekend, someone is hosting a party. We all get together and eat, and it's actually a really nice time. But there's always that one creepy uncle. In my case, it's my mom's brother. He's 46-year-old and has never married, but he's a bachelor. He's got money, so he basically has a bunch of sugar babies. Whenever my family tells him that he needs to get married, he says he'll never get married to anybody. He thinks women only exist for the pleasure of men. When I turned 16, I noticed that he would stare at me a lot. At first, it was just staring. Every now and again, he never did anything really creepy then, but just the staring was enough for me. I never told my mom about it then, not until I turned 18. This is when he started making comments like, wow, you're growing into your body, or wow, you got great hips. He would make comments about how I was growing up, like, ew. He even told my dad that he needed to keep me away from guys because I was growing up really quickly. And because of my curves, men would think that I was a woman. This is when I finally told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable. She thought it was funny at first, so I avoided him at all costs. Part 2. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. When I told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable, she laughed it off. She thought it was funny. She said, oh, you know how he is. So from that point on, I basically avoided my uncle every time we were at a family event. When I turned 20, this is when things got even worse. He would ask me things like if I was a virgin, or if I had a boyfriend, if I had ever been on dates. And one time he even told me that he would get very jealous if I ended up bringing a guy to one of our family events. One time he complimented me on the dress that I was wearing, so after that, I only wore baggy clothes to family events. The fact that I had to change the way that I dress so that he could control himself makes me sick. I finally told my mom again that my uncle was always bothering me. It's when she told me that the world is filled with men like him, and that all I needed to do was just ignore him. So I told my dad everything. My dad took it a little more seriously and told my uncle that he needed to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. I finally told my dad and he told my uncle to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed and told my dad that he was overreacting, and that all he said to me was that I was a pretty girl. What a liar. In part 1 and 2, I told you guys that it was getting worse, but here's where it actually gets even worse. Like I said, I have a really big family, so my cousins are growing up too. One of them just turned 13 and my uncle cannot stop staring at her. She's maturing a lot quicker than most 13-year-olds. He's already staring at her. So here's what I did. At the next family event, I sat right next to him. Every time he would stare at one of my cousins or try to make a comment at me, I called him out for it in front of everybody. I even recorded the things that he said. The fact that I even have to do this at a family event makes me sick. Instead of enjoying my time with my family, I have to sit next to my creepy uncle policing him. Anyway, it's totally worth it though. I'm making sure that my cousins don't feel uncomfortable. After I had enough recordings of him saying nasty things, at the next family event, I showed it to my grandma. I basically played it for the entire family. My grandma told him that he couldn't come to any more events if he was going to behave that way. And of course, he apologized to everyone right away. But not to me, he apologized to my dad. After his half-ass apology, he was let back into family events. I don't think that's enough punishment. Give me some ideas because I think I deserve justice. Creepy uncle.
My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her one bit. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost a year. When I met him, he already had a very big group of best friends. One of them was this girl. There's actually another girl in the group, but my boyfriend and this particular girl, let's call her Lacey. Lacey is completely obsessed with my boyfriend. I tell him all the time, but he doesn't want to listen to me. She goes out of her way to spend time with him, and she'll do girlfriend things for him. Sometimes she'll call him and say, I cooked us dinner, come over to my apartment. She even goes to his apartment and helps him do laundry. Let me go back though. When we started dating, he asked me not to be uncomfortable and that him and her were only good friends. But as soon as I saw them with each other, it was visible that she was in love with him. When he first brought me around to meet his friends, she was super territorial. She would sit next to him and even sat on his lap in front of me. And this made my boyfriend uncomfortable. He asked her to sit on a chair instead of his lap. After that, I asked him if he had feelings for her and he said no. He said he's only ever seen her as a sister, that the thought of hooking up with her makes him want to vomit. Lacey reached out to me and asked me to have lunch with her. Throughout the whole lunch, all she talked about was my boyfriend, how amazing he is, and how only a good girl deserves him. Part 2 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. And her and I went to lunch. All she talked about was my boyfriend. That's when she started saying things like, he only deserves a really good girl. That's when I was straight up with her. I told her that he had already chosen me because he loved me. And that I didn't need her to tell me what my boyfriend needed. You guys should have seen the look on this girl's face. She was shocked that I would defend myself and even talk back to her. Then she said, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. I told her that I didn't feel bad and that I knew what she was doing. She was basically trying to intimidate me and make me feel that I wasn't good enough for my boyfriend. She denied it and started apologizing. But at least I made it clear to her that I was not stupid and that she was not going to walk all over me like she probably did with all of his exes. By the way, one of his past girlfriends actually broke up with her because of this girl. I mean, Lacey. Found this out through one of the other friends. They told me that I needed to be careful with her. And that's why I was prepared to go to lunch with her. Guess what happened though? I called my boyfriend to say hi to him and that's when he starts yelling at me. He said Lacey called him to tell him that I had attacked her at lunch. That I basically threatened her. I explained to him what happened from my point of view, and he said that she was probably just overreacting. But it was her word against mine. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I do not trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sent me on Instagram. After Lacey told my boyfriend that I had attacked her and threatened her, he told me to keep my distance. So I did. But that meant that he would hang out with her without me. I found this completely unacceptable. That's when I told my boyfriend that she was manipulative, that she had clearly planned everything out so that he and her could be alone. Then I told him that his ex-girlfriend left him because of her. He told me that I didn't know the full story and that I should mind my own business. That's when I noticed that he wouldn't come over to my apartment every day. And guess why? His best friend Lacey told him that she had a stalker and that she needed my boyfriend to stay over her house so that she could feel protected and safe. I just can't. I told him that she was clearly manipulating him and probably lying about the stalker situation so that he could spend more time with her. And just like that, 2 days later, he told me that they were moving in together and that she miraculously found an apartment big enough for the two of them. In 2 days? I don't think so. I think she had been planning this the whole time. And my boyfriend is just stupid enough to fall for it. I told him if he moved in with her that he should just forget about me. He begged me not to leave him, so I guess I'm still his girlfriend. He's still debating whether or not to move in with her. He says he doesn't want to lose me, but he wants to be able to be there for her. I think I should break up with him, but maybe there's another solution. What do you guys think I should do?
Story time about how I was accused of sexually harassing my coworker. This is my story time. I did post this yesterday, but it was like 5 minutes long, so here we are. Back in 2018, I had just gotten married and my best friend was working at a company called S3 in New York City. I was so excited to get this job, you guys. I was so broke at the time. Before that, I had worked as everything. I was an assistant, maid, served at like 20 different restaurants, worked at the strip club, and I did a whole slew of other things. This job paid me $8,000 a month. It was amazing. Like, I thought I was set for life. The job was pretty simple and it was really stress-free. I had to make phone calls and sell a financial app, and I was pretty good at it. Like I said, my best friend got me this job and it was really nice because I got to hang out with her every single day at work. Now, my desk was next to somebody called Justin. Justin was one of the salespeople at the company. I heard from a few people that before I got there, Justin was not the friendliest. He wouldn't make jokes or laugh, but after I got there, his attitude completely changed. To be honest, I had fun with him and he was a great coworker. But of course, that was it. I didn't see him as anything else other than a coworker. He and I would make jokes all the time, talked about music and movies. He would talk to me about his dating life, and I would give him advice. This man either had really strong feelings for me, or he really hated me, because he ended up getting me fired. Part 2 is story time about how I was accused of sexual harassment and I got fired for it. This is my personal story time, by the way. The villain of the story, named Justin, he and I got along really well, and I sat next to him every single day at work. By the way, Justin was the youngest guy out of the entire company. Everyone else was middle-aged white men, while me and my best friend are beautiful and young and gorgeous. As you can imagine, we got stared at a lot. To be honest, this didn't really bother me because I've been stared at a lot in life. But when you find out what happened, it's infuriating. Walking down the street doing this voiceover. This is how badly I want to post this. The owner of the company is Bob. Bob and I got along really well. You see, I thought I was taken seriously in this workplace. I thought that I had value. But of course, apparently to these older white men, I did not. Today I get home from work and I get a message from Gabe, my manager. I don't like Gabe. Gabe told me not to come into work. And the following day, he tells me not to come into work again. Can you see how this would freak anyone out? I had a really bad feeling. Serena had no idea what was going on. If she did, she would tell me. This girl had my back always. Part 3 will be up soon. Story time about how I was accused of sexually harassing my coworker and got fired for it. This is my personal story time. Well, when I was told for the second time not to come into work, I was completely freaked out. Serena, who got me the job, asked me to meet her at Central Park. I had a bad feeling. Can you guys believe that S3 asked my best friend to fire me? They didn't have the balls to do it themselves because they knew that what they were firing me for was completely unfair. I get to Central Park and Serena tells me that they fire me. By the way, another coworker was there. His name was Jason. By the way, Jason had the same job as Serena and I and got paid a lot more. Inequality does exist. Went into a depression. I was anxious, was afraid, didn't know what had happened. Emailed the company asking what happened and they didn't want to tell me. Anyway, a couple of months later, I find out that Justin had gotten me fired. He told the boss that I was offering him blowjobs. By the way, when I got fired, Justin offered me financial help, pretended to be my friend. What an asshole. October of that same year, he performed the song in Culiacan live. He projected an image of El in the background the entire time. As you can imagine, this was pretty offensive to a lot of people. After that, he denied that he had any connection to the cartel. And then we have the iconic video of him talking about Bad Bunny at a concert.
En todo puto México, somos los primeros que han puesto un corrido en el top 1, superando al pendejo del Bad Bunny. ¿Por qué? Porque los mexicanos somos la puta verga.
But then him and Bad Bunny were seen talking at a concert. I don't know if it was at Coachella or something like that. I think they're probably on good terms, and it also benefits Bad Bunny if he is. Peso Pluma is everywhere right now, and if he were to collaborate with anybody, it should probably be Peso Pluma, just because they're both so popular. March 17 of 2023, Ella Baila Sola was released.
Story time about how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 months. He's a personal trainer, so he's really into fitness. When we started dating, I wasn't super fit, but I definitely was toned. Unfortunately, I got the Rona, so I got fired from my job because I couldn't work for 2 weeks. I was super sick and I really became depressed. I basically sat on my couch for those 2 weeks and ate a lot. Before I knew it, I had gained 7 pounds. When I finished my quarantine, I finally was able to see my boyfriend. And when he first came into my house to see me, he looked shocked. He looked me up and down and said, "Did you gain weight?" I said, "Yeah, I probably gained like 7 or 10 pounds. And then he asked me how I could let myself go like that. I told him I was totally by myself, cooped up in my apartment, and I had nothing else to do but eat. And that's when he said, and I quote, "Well, we need to get you back into the gym to get you in shape again, because I don't want a fat girlfriend." I laughed because I thought for sure he's joking, but then he said, "Stop laughing, it's not a joke." My stomach sank and I felt like I was gonna poop my pants. I started to cry and he told me that I shouldn't be a baby, that he's allowed to be honest with me about stuff like this because it has to do with him being attracted to me. So in other words, he wasn't attracted to me anymore. That's when he went into my room, picked out a pair of leggings and a sweatshirt, told me to get dressed, and took me straight to the gym. He made me exercise for an hour and a half. Instead of getting upset about it, I decided to just take it in stride and go with it. I thought maybe I can get in the best shape of my life now that I have a trainer boyfriend. As we were working out, he kept commenting on my thighs. He said that they needed to have a gap and that instead of being muscular, I was super soft. Again, I started to cry. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. After he told me that I was soft at the gym, I started to cry again. I told him that I needed to be more sensitive towards my feelings and that I didn't want to be in a relationship if he was going to be like this toward me. That's when he said that he didn't want to be in a relationship with me because I had gained weight and that's not what he had signed up for. That's when he told me I needed to look around and see all the fit women in the gym and that he could have any of those girls. I was in utter shock. I just couldn't believe that he was talking to me like that, and I had never seen that side of him before. The more I cried, the angrier he got, but finally he said, "Okay, I'm sorry. Let's just do 20 minutes on the Stairmaster." That's when I told him I didn't want to work out anymore. Mind you, he had already had me at the gym for an hour and a half. That's when he said, "Fine, I'll take you home, but I'm coming back to the gym." The whole way home, he stayed quiet and gave me the cold shoulder while I cried. He pulled up to my house and I got out of the car and he literally sped away as fast as he could. He proceeded to give me the cold shoulder for the next 2 days. I finally broke and texted him telling him we needed to speak. That's when he said we could talk at the gym. I agreed and he went to pick me up. But the first thing he wanted to do at the gym was put me on a scale and weigh me. I told him absolutely not. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. He was trying to force me to get on the scale so that he could weigh me because he wanted to see how much weight I could lose in 1 week. I kept saying no, but then he said fine. Then he handed me a piece of paper and said, "Here's the diet I want you to follow for the next 4 weeks." I grabbed the piece of paper and just put it in my purse. Then he has the audacity to get mad at me for not even looking at the diet. He said that I was disrespectful and that I didn't even look at the diet and that it took him hours to write all of that out. And then he said the thing that crushed my heart. He would be embarrassed to take me around his friends and family with the way that I looked. As soon as he said that, I ran out of the gym and walked home. Of course, he followed me and told me to get in the car, but I refused. I finally got to my house and he called me. I told him I needed some time away from him and that his behavior was extremely toxic, and that if I didn't have a problem with my weight, neither should he. That's when he said that he was accustomed to only being with girls that were super fit and even had abs. He told me that at first he wasn't convinced if he should date me, but I had a really pretty face, and that he was willing to overlook the fact that I wasn't super fit. He's a total narcissist, but I'm still in love with him. I tried to break up with him, but he said no, and he's still insisting that we just go to the gym together at least. I don't even know how to respond to him. What should I say? Here's a story time about when I broke off my 1.5-year engagement with my ex-fiance. We met on a movie set. He was playing my boyfriend, and within a week, we were already calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend. 2 months into the relationship, he convinced me to move to LA with him because we both wanted to pursue acting seriously, and he was an established model already. He had worked in Tokyo and Paris as a model.
Of course, I was so in love. I said yes, and I left my family, which was really heartbreaking for them. I will totally always regret that decision because I left way too soon. I was so young. We struggled for money in LA, but I decided to get a serving job, so I was making more money than he was because he was working at a movie theater making $8 an hour. Because of this, I had to pay for a lot of the bills, and I even started helping him pay off his school loans. We also shared a banking account, which was terrible because I was putting in way more money than he was. I hated the apartment we lived in because I would wake up with roaches in my hair, so I decided to get a second serving job. When I asked him to get a second job as well, he said no because he was very happy at his job. Part 2 is up. Part 2. So I asked my fiance if he could get a second job to help me out with the bills, and he said no. I would tell my mom and sisters about the situation, and they would tell me that he should definitely be helping me out more, and I just would make up excuses for him, and I just thought it's okay, he can work at the movie theater, and I will work my 2 jobs. At this point, I was paying for most of the rent, most of the bills, and his student school loans. I owed $20,000, you guys, and I was paying for all of that. I even got a third job because I wanted to save up to move out of that crappy apartment. Finally, I got hired at the strip club as a cocktail waitress, and I was able to quit all of my other jobs. My ex-fiance was definitely happy with the amount of money I was making at the strip club. Of course, he felt absolutely no pressure to get a new job and help me out. I finally put my foot down and told him we were moving to a better apartment because I was not happy in the apartment we were in. I told him he had no right to say no because I was the one paying for everything. We found the perfect apartment and I loved it. It was absolutely beautiful and I felt so at home there. Then one night I was sexually assaulted at the strip club. Of course, I was really affected by it. At first he was supportive, but after a few days he basically told me to get over it. 3. When he told me to just get over the sexual assault that I experienced at the strip club, I was shocked. I couldn't believe that the man I was about to marry would be so insensitive. And then I just started realizing, wait, I am paying for everything. I pay for your bills, I pay for your rent, I pay for your student loans, and you're here telling me to just get over this sexual assault. It was like someone had put a mirror to my face and was showing me the truth. The final straw was when I told him I wanted to quit the strip club because I didn't want to be in that environment and I didn't want to see the man that had sexually assaulted me again. He said, absolutely not, you can't quit, the money is too good. And that's when I broke up with him. I told him that I couldn't be with someone who didn't care enough about me and only really cared about the money and to be kept. He was so comfortable with me paying for everything and him just chilling at a job where he got paid $8 an hour while I was busting my butt every single night. He told me I would never find anyone better than him. The breakup was amicable, thank God. He didn't stress me out or anything. He kind of said, you know, you'll be back. Of course, I never went back. Know your worth and be with someone who actually cares about you.
My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her one bit. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost a year. When I met him, he already had a very big group of best friends. One of them was this girl. There's actually another girl in the group, but my boyfriend and this particular girl, let's call her Lacey. Lacey is completely obsessed with my boyfriend. I tell him all the time, but he doesn't want to listen to me. She goes out of her way to spend time with him, and she'll do girlfriend things for him. Sometimes she'll call him and say, I cooked us dinner, come over to my apartment. She even goes to his apartment and helps him do laundry. Let me go back though. When we started dating, he asked me not to be uncomfortable and that him and her were only good friends. But as soon as I saw them with each other, it was visible that she was in love with him. When he first brought me around to meet his friends, she was super territorial. She would sit next to him and even sat on his lap in front of me. And this made my boyfriend uncomfortable. He asked her to sit on a chair instead of his lap. After that, I asked him if he had feelings for her and he said no. He said he's only ever seen her as a sister, that the thought of hooking up with her makes him want to vomit. Lacey reached out to me and asked me to have lunch with her. Throughout the whole lunch, all she talked about was my boyfriend, and how amazing he is, and how only a good girl deserves him. Part 2 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. And her and I went to lunch. All she talked about was my boyfriend. That's when she started saying things like, he only deserves a really good girl. That's when I was straight up with her. I told her that he had already chosen me because he loved me and that I didn't need her to tell me what my boyfriend needed. You guys should have seen the look on this girl's face. She was shocked that I would defend myself and even talk back to her. Then she said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. I told her that I didn't feel bad and that I knew what she was doing. She was basically trying to intimidate me and make me feel that I wasn't good enough for my boyfriend. She denied it and started apologizing, but at least I made it clear to her that I was not stupid and that she was not going to walk all over me like she probably did with all of his exes. By the way, one of his past girlfriends actually broke up with her because of this girl. I mean, Lacey. Found this out through one of the other friends. They told me that I needed to be careful with her. That's why I was prepared to go to lunch with her. Guess what happened though? I called my boyfriend to say hi to him and that's when he starts yelling at me. He said Lacey called him to tell him that I had attacked her at lunch, that I basically threatened her. I explained to him what happened from my point of view, and he said that she was probably just overreacting. But it was her word against mine. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I do not trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. After Lacey told my boyfriend that I had attacked her and threatened her, he told me to keep my distance. So I did. But that meant that he would hang out with her without me. I found this completely unacceptable. That's when I told my boyfriend that she was manipulative, that she had clearly planned everything out so that he and her could be alone. Then I told him that his ex-girlfriend left him because of her. He told me that I didn't know the full story and that I should mind my own business. That's when I noticed that he wouldn't come over to my apartment every day. And guess why? His best friend Lacey told him that she had a stalker and that she needed my boyfriend to stay over her house so that she could feel protected and safe. I just can't. I told him that she was clearly manipulating him and probably lying about the stalker situation so that he could spend more time with her. And just like that, 2 days later, he told me that they were moving in together and that she miraculously found an apartment big enough for the two of them. In 2 days? I don't think so. I think she had been planning this the whole time. And my boyfriend is just stupid enough to fall for it. I told him if he moved in with her that he should just forget about me. He begged me not to leave him, so I guess I'm still his girlfriend. He's still debating whether or not to move in with her. He says he doesn't want to lose me, but he wants to be able to be there for her. I think I should break up with him, but maybe there's another solution. What do you guys think I should do? I did the dirty with an underage student and fell in love with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sending me on Instagram. Here's some context. I'm a first grade substitute teacher, and over the summer I took some courses to be able to do high school. I just got out of an abusive relationship. My ex does not leave me alone. He began stalking me a couple of months ago. So I knew that I needed a change and I moved to a different town. Because I'm a substitute teacher, I'm able to have my own side hustles. And I moved to this new town, everything was better. I was earning way more money, so I decided to drop my side hustles and focus on being a substitute teacher because that's what I love. I expected to be teaching around 7th grade or 8th grade. When I got to the school, they actually asked me if I could do 12th grade students. I was more than happy to say yeah. I was intimidated by these students right away. I'm 24, so I'm about 6 years older than they are, but these kids, I swear, could smell the fear on me. One of the boys came up to me and started asking me questions right away. How old I was, where I lived. He thought that I was a new student. When I told him I was his teacher, he went and sat down. For the rest of the class, he kept staring at me and I couldn't help but stare back. He was incredibly handsome. He was 17 going on 18. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I did the dirty with my student. Please TikTok, do not delete this. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Like I said, I was 6 years older than him, was 17 going on 18. So on my first day as his teacher, he would not stop staring at me. And at the end of the class, he actually handed me his phone number. I was actually shook. Coming from an abusive relationship, my ex would always talk down on me. He would tell me that I was ugly and fat, even though I was actually a fitness model when I met him, and he forced me to leave my career. So when the student gave me his number, I was really flattered. And guess what I did? I went ahead and sent him a text message. Over the next week, we actually ended up just becoming friends. We would text each other every now and then, and I could tell that he was catching feelings really fast. I know you're gonna roll your eyes, but we actually had a lot in common. After the first week, I was actually transferred over to another grade, and that's when he asked me if I wanted to go to the movies with him. When I got to the movie theater, he greeted me with a flower and a kiss on the lips. I was in shock, and we proceeded to make out the entire movie. After that, I invited him to come over to my house, and he said yes. At first, he was shy when we got there. After 10 minutes, he warmed up, and we started kissing again. I did the dirty with one of my students and fell in love with him. TikTok, please do not delete this. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I said I'm on Instagram. After we did the dirty at my house, we were inseparable. He was always coming over to my place since he lived with his parents, and I lived by myself, and he was so different from my ex. He would come over and cook me dinner. He would even help me do my laundry. 2 months later, he turned 18. This is when we told his parents about our relationship, and his parents actually loved me. And I also introduced him to my parents. Exactly a year after we met, he proposed to me. And to this day, we are married. Now, here's the bad thing. People around our town started calling me a perv, and you know that other name? But he and I are so happy. And the people that called me all those names are now getting divorces. I'm still happily married and beautiful and young. You can say whatever you want in the comments, but when you're in love with someone, you just know it.